last few years have been a challenging time for retailers. Aggressive competition and a myriad of online specialists have seen the demise of many long-established retailers, a trend that has been accelerated in many sectors by the multiple lockdowns during COVID. Many of the online specialists are now coming under pressure themselves, especially in the aspects of customer acquisition, conversion, and soaring returns rates. So I was delighted to have the opportunity to sit down with Steve Hubbard, a globally experienced retailer whose maverick thinking has successfully tackled these issues using live commerce strategies and by reshaping the relationship with social and media platforms. So Steve, really good to see you. Thanks for agreeing to spend the time with me. I knew right away from the early conversation that we had that you had a mountain of really valuable insight that I wanted to take the opportunity to try and extract some of that from you. So I'm really excited to sit down, as I say, and do this today. Before we get started, for the benefit of anyone that's watching, You've had a really interesting career, right? So you started off in UK retail on the high street with people like M&S and Next, but most of your career has been spent outside of the UK, Asia Pacific, Middle East, North America. Quite an unusual career for a UK retail guy, right? Which you're not really a UK retail guy anymore. Although now you are back in the UK for the last 4 or 5 years, you've been MD CEO of Ideal World. Ideal World is a former TV shopping channel business who are now multi-channel, partnering with over 500 brands from home and garden to kitchen technology, health and beauty, jewellery, watches, apparel, footwear, and not just value-driven product. And this is one of the reasons I found your recent story so fascinating, but it also includes brands as diverse as Nike, Bosch, North Face, Calvin Klein, SodaStream, Tefal, some really diverse businesses, and you're doing this through the medium of live commerce, which I find completely fascinating. So first of all, can you explain what live commerce is?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, and great to be here, obviously having the conversation. As you mentioned, my sort of first endeavour of live commerce and even social commerce was even back in 2002 when I started a business called Sit Up TV, and obviously we had a very successful 3 or 4 years before we sold that business. But that in itself, coming out of the blue chip retail, as you mentioned, working with likes of M&S and Next and Debs and Arcadia Group, it was just a very unique environment, and it was retail versus media, and it's how you commercialise that and the value of content and what live content is, which is basically videoing of demonstrations of products in a reporter-led model, which is very presenter-led, with specialists or guests, and utilising that content in a way that is commercialising the output and the product description and feature and benefits that engages the audience, and therefore converts at a much higher rate historically, and actually certainly over the last 3 or 4 years there was significant case studies that we've done that have shown it can be as high as 4 or 5 times the average conversion rate in retail through live commerce. But certainly in the early days with Sit Up, obviously I learned a lot for those 3 years before I went and worked abroad, as you mentioned, in a number of countries. But I think the biggest thing for me was understanding the interaction of the consumer and how they behaved, how they became more and more engaged through that live interactive environment. And I think certainly since coming back to UK and working with Ideal Shopping Direct and Ideal Worlds, in the general merchandise area, the live commerce element has become, especially with COVID, I would say, becoming more empowering and further engaging, because people feel that with that live environment, whether that's through social means or whether that's through the website directly or through third-party media companies, it's extremely powerful medium of communication. So people feel they're actually in a shopping environment that they can actually interact, ask questions, and actually enable them to actually get more of a better customer experience and journey. And I think one that becomes more interesting for them, whereby we do see not only, as I mentioned before, the conversion rates being higher, but actually just the lifetime value of that customer, because they tend to buy more frequently, they tend to buy larger average order values, units per basket, because of the diversification of products we've built out over the last few years as well, with Ideal World especially, as I say. So I think that whole experience in live commerce is one that, as we know, is a very hot topic, I would say, in retail currently, and purely because it gives a very unique customer experience.
Yeah. So it's much more than TV shopping for the digital generation. There are differences, right?
Yes.
Between pre-recorded video content and live content. What would you say the key points are about that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. One, sort of again, coming back in the early 2000s, starting in this kind of arena and understanding sort of live content and pre-record content and how you get the best out of your content. There is a science to it. And I think, certainly, we'll come on, as we're having conversations, talk about other people who have done other things in the last couple of years, but certain businesses, even such as TikTok Shop, they haven't had the great success as they thought they might have, purely because it's what the content consists of. And I think that content, as I say, it's how you create the connection, therefore how you engage the customer, and then how you convert the customer. And through that process, it's very important to understand what good looks like and how that content is put together in a way that reiterates the benefits of a product or a service to the consumer, and that's the science element of it. Don't want to give all the secrets away, but basically there is a process. We call it 6 points in my learnings, and it's something that I've sort of put together in my vision, if you like, of since even the early days, I say, with sit up and bid up and price drop. And for me, these last 3 years, because of COVID, we've had to evolve that model a bit more, and part of that is using in our experience in how we edit content, both from a live and simulcast model, which is when it goes out to different pipelines through different media resource, but also how we look at pre-recorded content, how we then edit that content in the best form for those social platforms or for those other media platforms. And again, there is a different science to that in regards to length, in regards to actual content, and how that engages the customers, and the audience. So there is a very different, I would say, strategy as social platforms become more popular, and where we're generating content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which commercial content generation, as I call it. We're able then to edit that accordingly for the best means and the best media that's appropriate for that customer, and thinking about the customer's journey, and therefore what gains us the most engagement and therefore the most conversion.
Interesting. So as well as producing, I think you said to me at one point, over 25 different items of content every day.
Correct.
You're also sending that content down different pipelines. So it's not necessarily live content on social. It can be, but it's also live content through media partners. I think an example you gave to me previously was a specific, I think it was a homeware item on a home garden section of a major newspaper website, driving the dwell time up on that particular page from 2 minutes something to 6 minutes something. So obviously it's a two-way relationship there, where not only are you delivering your content to your customer, but also your partner is getting the upside of the much increased dwell time on their media platform as well. So quite an unusual model, right?
And I think, as you say, of all the stigma of TV home shopping, even with doing sit up and bid up and price drop, for me that wasn't TV home shopping, that was entertainment. It's creating engagement. It would create interaction with the customers, and actually creates loyalty, and that whole lifetime value again piece, and obviously with the high conversion. Now, for me, it's about commercial content generation, as I say, and that's how I explain, the Ideal World business. We're just commercial content generators, and we're experts at it, and we know what the customer would want, and we know what they like to hear, and I think, as you say, there is different strategies around the different mediums. And we found over time, and certainly as I say over the last 3 years, as online purchases, and customers become more educated online, and the older demographic especially, we're finding obviously their habits have changed. But certainly the dynamic of the live content versus pre-record and the edited elements of that, we then find obviously every single platform has its own sweet spot, whether you're an Instagram, or whether you're a Facebook. We've done stuff on Twitch, with gaming and the whole streaming there. And I think the streaming is the key. And so by I would say being able to edit the content in such a live way, we're able to simulcast content through other mediums. And as you touched on there, we've worked quite closely with Reach Media Group, obviously one of the largest media groups in the UK, and the Mirror Group of old. We've done a number of pieces of work and activity with them around exclusive products for their digital audience, whereby we're able to stream content live and pre-record their exclusive offers for their audiences and their readers. As you alluded to there, the success has been phenomenal for them and for us, and some really key learnings for media companies, because obviously they're looking at dwell times and they're looking at editorial articles that are an average of sort of 2.5 minutes. We've averaged up even to 7 minutes in dwell time, which is more than double, if not triple, the actual dwell time of average. And so it's very powerful content, and people find it very engaging because you're basically talking about products in what I call a soft sell environment, and not a firm sell. And I think when you're having that, presenter and guest led or reporter led content, as I say, it becomes that more engaging for the customers because it's natural. And I think that's where you have forced influencer content at sometimes. It becomes a lot more harder to sell and too pacey. Actually, for the average, viewer, and customer, they get put off by that. So you really need to understand. As I say, we've learned over the years, obviously myself being in this sort of media, retail, commercial content world for 8 to 10 years already. For me, it's quite intriguing because you take those learnings and say, okay, what do I want? I look at it very much through the consumer's eyes, through the customer's eyes. What do I find engaging? Yes, obviously, I'm a 50-year-old white male, but the average core audience, I think historically, again, this sort of people put, or the people perception, anyways, it's that sort of 55, 6-year-old retired people, are actually watching a demographic. Actually, it's not that. We get a lot of ABs. We get a lot of 40 plus. Yes, sort of the core audience is 45 to 50, but the content is very different, obviously, and the format of that is very different to different social platforms. Obviously, we're targeting both younger products, different forms of content for the Instagram customer, when we've done stuff even with TikTok, versus obviously what you look at from a Facebook point of view, for example. So I think it's really about learning in regards to those newer mediums, as I say, through perhaps other media spectrums, but certainly from a social commerce perspective, we certainly hit the sweet spot. And obviously, as you say, we've worked with over 500 brands, and international brands, very reputable brands from every single genre and category. And as I say, there is a science to that. And you mentioned about sort of 25 shows in sort of a live environment per day. But if you look at it from an editorial point of view, we're generating more than 100 pieces of content per day through our edit suites. And that gives the flexibility for brands then to actually recreate content on their behalf that they also use for their own websites and their own customer information, and selling. And obviously we've done a lot of work with those brands and tested various things, and generated content for them, as I say, that can be short form content. So when I talk about short form content, it'd be 8 to 10 seconds, so SKU specific product, along with a deal specific product, which is really about obviously the actual main or key line. And we have sort of 1, 2, 3 lines we normally say within the show. And there is again, not giving too much away, but there is a science to what content and how many products are within the show as well, because actually people's attention span you can overload, and the more choice you give to a customer at times, it can actually put people off. So actually more choice can actually lower conversion.
That's right, yeah.
So it's about the sweet spot of what you're actually generating as content and deals, as I say, within the content itself. But yeah, I think the biggest lessons certainly that we've seen and learned over the last 3 years specifically, as we've done more social commerce platforms and worked with more media groups like ITV and Sky, along with obviously Reach, is every piece of content is unique because every product is unique in its own right and entirety. But actually, you've got different reporters or presenters, you've got different specialists in that product arena, and so it is really about the team and generating a team and the quality of a team that understands commercial content. So it's understanding what actually the customer would like to hear in the period of time that we are airing to that customer, whether that's through let's say social platforms, normal terrestrial television and media channels, or whether it's within our own website as well, because obviously we are very multi-channel.
Actually, this is right across a really broad range of product groups. So perhaps where people's impression in the past has been that this type of retail is focused on a fancy shredder for the kitchen or something like that, where you've taken this is way beyond that. So what type of product groups have you been successful with and proven the model with?
Well, I think the business as a whole, we took a decision about 3 years ago to diversify. We built our own marketplace, so with over 500,000 SKUs. But really, we started working with distributors and brands directly, who suddenly realised actually, this is not TV home shopping. This is actually about creating content and actually working as a team and partnership with those brands to enable them to generate content that's right for them. And actually some of it can be about information, so literally how do you build that piece of furniture, how do you put that together, how do you cut the lawn more appropriately. I mean, basic things that actually potentially YouTube are doing, but we're doing it in an environment where people are educating themselves, but also at the same time are able to purchase something that they're interested in, and they understand the products a lot more. Therefore, when they buy the products, we'll come on to one subject later, but when we buy the products, because the information is so qualitative and it's quantitative as well, the reality is that they purchase it, and their experience is very good, and we get obviously work with a lot of customer groups to get that feedback. But I think the big thing is because of their confidence in the product, because they understand the product and what it does across the various categories, it's really about then the returns element is very low. Right. So, for example, we all actually read the press and we see certain retail groups, struggling around returns, and it can be as high as 50%. If I was to say actually our fashion arena is between 11 and 13% only in returns. Wow. And it goes again, our average return rate as a business is only 8%. Wow. Across all categories. And so that is the power of video commerce in itself, and enabling to, especially with live commerce, is enabling to interact with the customer whereby they ask questions. And they might want to know, well, is that a true size 10 as a dress? Should I go up a size or down a size? It's the same with footwear. It's the same with jewellery. People want to understand the flexibility as well of the product and what it can and can't do. And I think having that live interaction enables them to do that and gives them the confidence to buy. They have a great customer journey. They get the product within sort of 3 working days, and at the end of the day, they're very happy with their purchase and they come back for more. And that, again, that creates that CRM program and that lifetime value that is second to none. And I think obviously again that also is a big part of the fact of why their conversion rates are much higher, is because you've got a loyal customer, but you also got new customers that can see and understand the product a lot more in detail, and they then come back, as I say, and the repeat purchase is quite sizable. So that ratio, it really has allowed us to grow the business quite rapidly, and give us the confidence actually to test more categories. And coming back to your point, about 3 years ago, when Aurelius bought the business 3.5 years ago, they were very much wanted to work on a destination department store model rather than a singular one-dimensional model as what TV home shopping is historically known for. So you're selling a pen and you're selling it for that day and it's at that deal and it's only that deal for 24 hours. That's not what it's about. What it's about is having a multitude of categories and becoming a destination department store where people see certain products and watch certain content around the products. But it gives them the confidence in that customer experience to actually add something else to their basket. And so it's been phenomenal that again, not giving too many secrets away, but the reality is we've grown our basket size very sizable over the last 3 years by just enabling the bandwidth of products and categories. And I think as we've done that, to a point, what's the A brands, I would say, international businesses have suddenly realised, there's great value in that, and they've watched us and we've had conversations and they've come on board with us over the last couple of years. Even Clark's Footwear, for example, Osprey London. So going into actually bridge brands and more premium pricing, there doesn't seem to be any barriers to market in that respect. Because actually, as long as you're talking about the products, it's presented like saying a more soft sell and conversation environment when you're describing the product and you're showing the values and the features and benefits and the added value of that deal. That's where obviously that creates the engagement and therefore people then purchase. And I think we see that on average, for that first purchase when people do come back, they will buy from a similar product category, but that 35 to 40% of those customers are buying into a new category on their second purchase. So it actually is translating through the categories. So the interest there, because I think it's about trust. They trust the product because they see the live content or the pre-recorded content about the product. And that's very much a reason of why buy now. And of course you can create that urgency, but you can create urgency to buy for a customer. That really is about availability. So units available, we've got this exclusive deal for so many units. But also I think it's more about the fact that it can be time bound, as I say, historically, but it can also be exclusive and exclusive launches. And actually the greatest success we've had with the A brands are where we actually exclusively launch their new product lines into the European market.
In terms of the makeup of the business, the differentiator is the live commerce element of it, isn't it?
Yes.
So in terms of things like supply chain, returns, customer service, customer support, I know you pride yourself on and I've experienced your online customer chat support and so on. It's slick, it's good, but it's not the differentiator versus any other good, well-operated online business, is it? The bit that makes the difference is how you take the product to the customer. And in terms of the demographics, you touched slightly on the demographics of the shopper earlier. You do very well with older groups of customers, older demographics, but you're making this work with quite a young audience as well.
Correct. And I think as you say, I think we've developed something that has become this destination, home shopping environment. But where we obviously are driving success is through the live content and live streaming side of that. And the reason being is because it's our USP, it's our unique selling point. I think we see in the press and certainly over the last few months a number of .com businesses that are struggling, and again, not naming names, but they've really had a tough time this last year, and coming out of the COVID environment, and I think that is where historically 25% of people purchased online. Now it's more like 45%. That exponential growth has come through COVID, people being educated, and no matter what demographic. And with that though, the 25% that were shopping historically online have continued to shop online, but I believe it has become stagnant, and that customer experience and therefore the engagement and therefore the conversion rates are dwindling, along with new customer rates, and I think that and high cost of customer acquisition, I say, for a lot of these .com businesses, and I think that's purely because everyone has become the same. And so there's no differentiator in that customer journey and that customer experience, and therefore the engagement is not there. What we find again, and our point of difference is that live commerce.
Yeah.
You know, is that enablement of interaction with the customer throughout the day, you know, and throughout the different mediums, you know, and very diverse demographics. As I say, you know, we've done a lot of work with certain platforms like Instagram and TikTok and sort of younger demographic, but obviously we do a lot of work with Facebook, you know, and other media companies that tend to have sort of 40 plus demographic.
Yeah.
So, but it works across all demographics because you're creating that engagement. And obviously I mentioned earlier, you know, someone like TikTok Shop, they had a great success when they first launched a year ago. I think their productivities aren't as high as they wanted them to be, but again, they have an audience there through an influencer model that has been reasonably successful. As I say, not as successful, I think, as they wanted, but that's to do with the actual content itself and what good looks like.
Yeah.
Which differs again by demographic.
And I would imagine that, you know, TikTok is in quite an embryonic stage.
Yes.
with their retail platform.
Yeah.
There must be lots of people who are experimenting and learning as they go. Is that how you got your knowledge of how to approach live commerce in this way? Did you look elsewhere? How have you become the expert?
I think, you know, I'd love to think I was expert, but you know, you always have a teacher, I suppose, in life, but at any point in time. But I think for me, how I've learned is, you know, those early days in 2002, 2005 with Sit-Up, was, you know, come out of blue chip retail. Again, you see and live and learn what good looks like in regards to the length of that content, what call to actions, as we call it, which is when you're iterating a deal, all the products and feature and benefits, you know, how fast or how slow a product and therefore needs to be demonstrated, which shows then the pace of the show itself in its entirety. And you know, and I think because we built a team, even in 2002, 2005, of people from different walks of life that came into the business, into this amazing team environment, you know, which had a mixture of, you know, commercial, media, you know, operations, you know, logistics, you know, an amalgamation of talent, if you like. And we built that team from nothing to over 250 people within sort of an 18-month period. That really was where I took my learnings, because you sort of had the base of blue chip retail, and I understand commercially what a customer wants, but you start looking at more and more through a customer's eyes and put yourselves in their living room, or you know, while they're watching on their phone, you know, or their desktop, or their, you know, or their tablet. And I think you put yourselves in their shoes and really try and understand what level of engagement you would have around that product. And how engaging that should be, and therefore should it be, you know, sort of 2 minutes, or should it be 20 minutes, or should it be 40 minutes, you know, in regards to that product or that brand, and how do you tell that story? So I think that's the other thing to understand is it's really about who's the storyteller, you know, and what is the story, because it's about educating someone and a customer in a way that actually is truly educating them, telling a story about that brand or that product or that service, because it's services as well as product. You know, so I think, you know, those early days certainly taught me a lot. So, you know, having then working internationally for 13, 14 years and working in some great countries and with some phenomenal retail businesses and running, you know, very sizable companies over that period of time, you know, I always, and all what the trait for me, I always think about everything, the customer comes first. It's about the customer always. And looking at through that customer's perception of how they, or how I would like to be treated, or what I would like to see, and what I believe are the key facts of a products and feature and benefits that will enable me to buy, and what will then get me across the line to convert. And I think those learnings, you know, both from a media point of view and a, you know, commerce point of view with Sit-Up and Bid-Up and Price Drop, and then coming into 14 years of international retail, coming back to UK 4 and a bit years ago. You know, certainly coming back into a business like Ideal Shopping Direct, you know, which was you know, .com businesses and home shopping businesses in craft and obviously general merchandise. I think, you know, it sort of opened my eyes again to actually the UK is quite far behind here. You know, from a digital strategy, and actually quite far behind from how you use and understand the value of content. And I think, you know, those learnings coming back, you know, say into the UK market 4.5 years ago, I suddenly adapted with the team, and we brought in different skill sets and broaden our horizons, I mentioned earlier, with the diversity of product categories, but also our capabilities at production. So bringing in media agency people, actually people that came from an agency environment into us, people that came from hospitality to work for us, that understand the customer, even people from a training point of view that work with a lot of the bigger beauty brands, who were phenomenal people, and bringing that talent into the company to actually train the trainer, and educate people, and bringing more and educating more younger presenters, so which are again more apt for that younger generation and that demographic, and educating them and people that are guests, and developing them in a succession plan, enabling them to become presenters. It's that whole succession plan, that team building, and they're sort of the key learnings I took to what's enabled us to get to where we are today. We were able to service adequately, like I say, mainstream brands, bridge brands, and premium luxury brands, in a way that we know what fits. And again, servicing them and working with them through different media channels, that what works best for the brand. At the end of the day, and the customer journey.
Fascinating. And one of the things you touched on there is where you went to get different people, because you're not going to find the right type of skill set from other retail businesses, right? Because it's so unique. So you have to go elsewhere to get the talent. One thing I'm interested in is when bricks and mortar businesses move to become .coms or straight normal e-commerce businesses, the architecture of the people in the organisation changed, and suddenly marketing transitioned into customer acquisition, right? And then you had other specialties that came afterwards, so things like site optimization or even checkout optimization, and then later on retargeting specialists, that type of thing. What type of specialists have you added? Because presumably you do those type of things as well, but to make live commerce sing, how's your people architecture changed?
I think we've invested in, I would say, data and data analysts to really understand people's behaviourisms. Because when you're at the forefront and we're able to get data around people's activities throughout the day, and how engaged and how long do they stay watching a show, and how have they purchased that item, and working closely obviously with Google and Google Analytics and the guys. But I think the analytical side of that and the data side of that, we're very fortunate, I would say, because we're having that live data which are able to interpret. So that data, for example, as a prime example, enables us to say, okay, well, that product worked best going out on that medium for that long at that time of day, but didn't do so well in the afternoon, or didn't do so well in the evening. And we can change that strategy live. So we see that data. So, building a team that enables and incorporates us to then evolve, and then we may change that content to be a different product or a different brand that's relevant to that time of day and that demographic through that different medium. Having that flexibility and being able to give yourself that flexibility, you need to build a team of experts and talent that understand the customer and the customer journey in its entirety. But I think where we look at from a live commerce point of view, the big point of difference is we're engaging with that customer. And we're getting direct feedback live, so we can quite easily pivot a show or a product demonstration within the show itself. So, and that's how live we work. We have, we've got our own galleries, we've got our own edit suites, and obviously because we're live on air and we have talkback, as we call it, with our presenters and our experts, we can tweak a show and the format of a show live within the show. And so. But in order to get that and understand that, you have to have the right talent and expertise, both from a production perspective, like I say, from an agency and media perspective, to understand what brands really want and what the customer journey and what good looks like. But I think the big thing for me, and the big thing that we've learned, is about investing in the CRM journey, because the CRM and the customer journey is so different in every medium. Even though you might think you have the same demographic, actually their journey and how they buy and how they come to convert, and then how they repeat purchase, and what are the right buttons to push,
and
what is the true cost of acquisition. All of that is very different for every medium.
Right.
And I think those learnings are invaluable. But again, it's building a team that enables us to understand and take those decisions rapidly, to benefit the brand and benefit our customer in the end, during the whole journey.
And this isn't just live commerce. Is not just a unique thing to Ideal World, right?
No.
Live commerce is growing very strongly in some other markets around the world.
I mean, the numbers out of China are just absolutely phenomenal. As I said to you earlier, in my time, I spent obviously 8-10 years alone in Asia. And obviously technology has evolved, and I think people have taken to it a lot more quickly throughout all age demographics. But what's interesting is, this year, live streaming will account for more than $400 billion US.
Wow.
So exactly. So it's quite eye-opening, to say the least. And then you look at other countries, in the US, they're a fraction of that size, because I think it is really to do with what content looks like and understanding what is the content that is required for that audience. And so some of it is technology driven. So as you say, we're not the only people, obviously, have been working around live commerce. We've evolved that way because we've been generating commercial content for 23 years as a company. And I think, naturally the skill set and talent is there to be able to develop this content. I think, but with companies such as OO and Firework, which are just a couple of technology businesses that have launched their own video commerce and social commerce formats over the last year, that is opening the eyes to certain retailers who want to evolve. And I think the key fact there, the key point is who want to evolve, who are not nervous to evolve and get into this medium of live commerce and video commerce, and therefore social commerce, because it's a much more affordable way of generating new customers, because it creates that engagement. It obviously is creating conversion at substantially higher than the average retailer at 2.5%, and as I say, we're averaging 8 or 9%. And on top of that, obviously, you've got the lifetime value of that customer is growing overall, because of the loyalty, because they're finding that engagement and they're coming back for more. And again, wholeheartedly commercially, for a lot of these businesses that work in Asia, they're phenomenally profitable, because where before they were having quite sort of 35-40% returns, they're now having return rates more like 15%. So that is the difference between obviously profit and loss. There are a lot of retail companies based on the EBITDA margin.
And of course, the background for the .coms is quite challenging at the moment.
I think as a retailer, I've been in retail 30 years, you sort of never want to be too critical or overcritical of businesses. I think, but where businesses become stagnant and become complacent, and unfortunately, in bricks and mortars, you touched on earlier, my old sort of territory of Debenhams and Burton Group of old, and Arcadia, obviously, went a bit pear-shaped, 18 months, 2 years ago. And we're obviously, the high street looks very different now, but that was because they became complacent and didn't evolve, as a company, and didn't invest, I don't feel, in the right technology or talent at the time. And it's whys and reasons why, and people talk about whys and reasons, but for me, you can't be critical, because the high street, and obviously there's a lot of heritage in the high street. I think now that where the .coms have taken over the last sort of 3 or 4, 5 years, again, it's come to a point whereby those businesses, again, not naming names, but certain people are really struggling, and they at the critical point whereby they need to evolve. And I think they look at content in a certain way, and a flat image or a multi-user image that has movement. That is not live commerce. That's not even video commerce. And so I think the reason why a lot of .com businesses are intrigued but haven't put their foot or toe in the water is purely because you don't know what you don't know. It's a famous saying that I use quite
Yeah.
often. And so you're not being critical. It's just that people really don't understand this space.
Yes.
You know,
I mean, I've been surprised that I've spoken with people about live commerce, and people who I would expect to know what live commerce is, and the response has been, well, what do you mean by that? Do you mean video? And I know, not pre-recorded video. This is live, live delivery, live commerce, and so on. I mean, apart from you guys at Ideal World, who's doing a good job? Who's doing something interesting in this space at the moment?
I think it's really from a company point of view. I think the technology businesses are being a bit more forward thinking in their adaptation of markets. So as I mentioned, a couple there like Fireworks is another one called Hello Lisa. These technology businesses have built themselves into more commercial, and they've actually built their own studios, to be able to generate content for the retailers. They brought in the agency, and actually built talent and teams, which are very credible. But again, people haven't heard of them. The amount of retailers and CEOs and owners of businesses internationally that I know, and I speak to regularly, and they say, are you still working in home shopping? And I say and explain. They don't understand this area at all. And I think your experience is mostly the same as mine, is whereby people's perception is very different of actually what it is, in regards to what live commerce is and how that can create further engagement, and actually the real, I would say, incremental experience and customer journey that creates that engagement and return custom. And again, come back to lifetime value. All those key metrics as a retailer are game changing. And I think I can talk about the conversion rates, and people are like, no, but we've had some real life experiences. And so I would say people are a bit more entrepreneurial. And so I work with a certain gentleman from Dragon's Den, and one of his brands, or two or three of the brands actually, but we've done one of the fashion brands, Finery, that is in M&S and other known retailers. We launched autumn winter exclusive collections with them in sort of September, October last year, and also the spring summer collections. What they learned from that journey with us, both in regards to the live commerce element and how that feeds back into their own website and the tail of that customer into their own brand, and therefore the conversion rate on top of that customer and volume of customer, I think was very eye-opening to them. And the key learnings from that is they went from an average of sort of 2.7% conversion rate to almost 5% conversion rate. So almost doubled their average, and generated a sizable new customer data. And a customer that's gone on to return again and purchase for the second time. So that whole customer acquisition, if you think about it, there was no charge for that. These are brands and products that are working with experts, who know how to generate the right live commercial content in the right, I would say, format, because it's all about length as well and what is in it. But certainly going back into their own website and even having 8 to 10 second video content of a SKU, that in itself is very powerful. I think there's a misdemeanor of the cost of content. I think that's also why there's a barrier to entry in this arena, because I think a number of retailers have been working with agencies for a sizable period of time, sort of 15, 20 years even, with some, again, not naming name studios. And they're amazing at what they do, and they create advertisements and e-commerce content and social content. But would they say they're experts in commercial content? And certainly live, commerce? The answer is, I would say no. And I think they'd openly admit that, because it's such a new area for them too. Now, the perception is from a retailer that the cost of that content is X, and the perception of an agency is the content cost will be Y. But actually, I would call it dithering around, a number of other players that are more technology orientated, that are going the other reverse. So where I would say retail meets media, you've got technology investing in media to service the customer, And that customer can be B2C, B2B, even D2C.
Yeah.
And that's the power of live content, because of what the value add, of that customer experience. And that the fact is, people can buy now.
Yeah.
So people with a click of the button or click on their screen can buy immediately the product they're seeing on air, all through that different medium and that live stream. They buy now. And that's the power, and that creates that urgency, whether that's about the limited quantity of products, or whether it's exclusive for a period of time. But the buy now element is what creates that higher conversion and creates that better experience, I would say, because time is money for the average person. Obviously people, especially younger Gen Z sort of age groups, they 10 seconds watching something on their phone is quite a long period of time, believe it or not. So you have to capture that engagement immediately, but having that buy now functionality, which is where technology companies, I think, are taking a step above the retailer or the agencies, because they have the technology to be able to incorporate that customer experience.
So I'm wondering if you've worked out from an economic point of view, do you need to be selling or retailing something at a particular price point to make the economics work? So does it have to be 50 quid retail and above, or could you make it work at a lower level? So would this work for somebody like Domino's Pizza, selling a pizza at 10 quid and the margin's 2 quid, and can they drive? Could it work at that level?
If you think about the conversion rates, it's a volume game,
right?
So which means, if you're looking at it from a business and economics point of view, as someone that's run P&L for 20 years, it's about cash margin. For me, it's about cash margin. So you're generating that cash margin because you're converting at a much higher rate. So yes, historically in normal media and home shopping world, $29.99 to $39.99 has always been a great sweet spot, because it's a no-brainer. Because people buy, and especially, by the way, if platforms are enabled to work with certain financial services, whereby you can take that home and pay over a period of 4 months, or 5 months, or 6 months. Where it becomes then accessible for a customer, it becomes definitely a no-brainer. And the buy now functionality. So if you can make it more affordable. So I think those financial services have certainly helped certain retailers to enable that conversion, I would say. I think, but from a point of view of pricing and price, architecture, whether it's, for example, of Domino's Pizza and service driven, or whether it's specific product driven, again, we've had no barriers to market the higher we've gone.
Right.
And like I say, we've launched a lot of more bridged and premium brands in the last couple of years, which have been very successful, and the output for them and that content has been successful for them in their own journey, in their own customer environment as well, and their tail, as I call it. And so I think the pricing is not key. I think it's just how, because we've been doing it for so many years, and obviously my expertise is how you take that service. What does a customer really want to hear? What is the call to action, as we call it? What are the real key dynamics? And it comes back to that science, as I mentioned earlier, again, not giving the recipe away, but it's really about those 6 points, that you're covering those points that enable that journey. And that goes for anything from a service of selling kitchens, or selling energy, or selling pizzas, or selling fashion. It doesn't matter. The principles are the same, because that's the science, because it's all about how you create engagement with that customer and what she or he would like to hear, and giving that feature benefits in the right time that enables them to feel like, wow, that's a great deal. Wow, I love that product. Or wow, this is really fun. I'm enjoying watching this. And actually, I'll watch a bit longer. Oh, by the way, I'm going to put it in my basket. That's the buy now element, and that's the psyche of a customer. But we've learned that psyche, and again, that's where the secret of data comes in, and how you then take that data and feed that back appropriately for that service or product, and what good looks like. And so we're enabled then to ourselves to see what good looks like, and what good looks like changes on a daily basis, because you've got a different day of the week, a different time of the day, on a different social platform or a different media platform. And so, with a different audience. And that audience obviously is changing and forever changing. So you're forever learning. And I think, for us, every day is a new day. We look at, you just in a general principle of home shopping, you look at every single schedule of a day and that live output in a very fluid way. And as I say, we're able to change it throughout the day and throughout the week. And so that's forever evolving. And so I think when I look at businesses and retailers that have become stagnant or complacent, even multinationals, as Domino's or Pizza Hut, whatever you want to say on that sort of food genre, this is what I call the point of difference. This is the sexy part, I feel, of retail. In the next 3 to 5 years, I feel that the power of live content, once you get to understand that power and use it in a way that is advantageous, not only from a commercial point of view, I think from a customer experience perspective, and thinking about the customer always, as I always do. And because they'll come back for more, because they have that amazing experience and they're fully engaged. And why wouldn't you come and look at live content or just video content and pre-record? Why would you not do that? Where 4,000 words is 1 minute of video, by the way.
Wow. Right. Okay.
So
wow.
That's it. So the 1 minute of content is this is obviously people researchers have looked at this, but it's proven that that 1 minute of content is actually over 4,000 words. So how do you put 4,000 words into a minute? Well, it's impossible.
Yeah.
But I think that's the power of live content, is being able to talk to an audience whereby they're interacting, because that interaction creates that conversation. That conversation creates that, I suppose, that experience for them and for us. Because we're learning from it as well.
And you've mentioned, during the course of our conversation, this has worked on a B2B basis, B2C basis. You mentioned services and so on. Where's the low-hanging fruit, right? Where are the areas that nobody's really taken live commerce yet, where
I think
you think there's great opportunity?
I think at source, and I think from source. I think a lot of people in D2C, again, is a very hot topic at the moment, isn't it? Whereby sort of margins are creeping and dwindling, and therefore some of these brands are going direct to customer, through the manufacturing cycle and becoming a bit more vertically integrated. I think that's a huge opportunity from a live commerce point of view, because actually, that D2C journey can be a lot easier for a customer, and it actually can be a lot more informative about the product or service directly from manufacturing. So I feel that live commerce will definitely progress, into that manufacturing space and then into distribution. And we've done a number of trials with our key brands that we work with and key suppliers that we work with.
Yeah.
We actually have as well, what's something we created 2 years ago. We have our own agency in-house. So we built our own ideal agency that allows actually the content to be manufactured for a B2B environment. So you're selling to a retailer or a wholesaler or a distributor through that brand or that service. And obviously the content and the quality of that content and the content itself is very different to what it normally be in a B2C environment. But they're the learnings, and that's the expertise that we have to be able to be flexible enough to understand what is the output required for that B2B environment versus a B2C environment.
In terms of the tech to make this happen, where's the market at the moment? You mentioned OO, for example, and other players like that. Are we sort of at an embryonic stage, or?
I think the technology companies, some of these businesses have been looking at this journey, if you like, and customer experience for perhaps 2 to 3 years. So it is very young in its entirety. And a lot of these businesses are at trial and error stages, I would say, of the technology in those learnings. But I think what's intriguing is a number of large consumer businesses like Nestle, and a large number of retailers, including Walmart, have already ventured into this space. And they're, as we speak, they're testing and trialing and learning and trying to understand. But certainly the interest by the larger players seems to be there. But like I say, the only barrier is the understanding of that. And I think, the fortunate thing, I suppose, for me is having been in retail 30 years and understand the commercial angle, but understanding the media side of the business, and then understanding technology and working with these technology companies over a number of years myself, and how we've adapted ourselves within our own business. That, I suppose, is the secret of putting what I call the jigsaw together, that can be extremely powerful. And I think, educating the retailers on that journey, and how you put when and how you put your toe in the water, and how you invest in your business to enable you to evolve in this space. Because, as I say, I think the key to success for retailers, where they're seeing obviously the traditional online platforms not be as productive, they have to evolve, they have to pivot. No matter how big you are or how experienced you are, you should never forget and never stop learning. And I think this is a learning process we're at today. So when you talk about embryonic stage, for me, it is really about technology companies have something, they know they have something, they don't necessarily know what they have. I know what they have, and obviously speaking to those guys, I've tried to steer them in a way that they then invest in their own studio space to give them flexibility to generate content, but then they need to build their own teams and the talent pool, from the different genres, as we said, different arenas, to build that talent, which they're starting to do. And certainly you now have studios in Manchester, and also studios in LA, and has technology to support the businesses and the retailers and the brands. And now they are at a very young stage of, like, say, being live for about a year, working with companies like JD Sports, like Lego. So, again, really reputable businesses that put their toe in the water already.
Yeah.
But there's a learning cycle, because for every single, as I say, every single product area, and every single media, content is different.
Yeah.
So you have to learn, and it takes time. As I say, we've been in this game as a company 23 years. I've been in this business, as I say, 10 years in that whole home shopping sort of video commerce and live commerce environment. And I'm forever learning, because every single product group and every brand, the sweet spot is slightly different.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on the media, it depends on the presenter, it depends on the expert. There's lots of touch points that can have a positive and negative effect to that output. And I think those learnings will evolve quite rapidly over the next 3 to 5 years. But I do believe, and certain technology companies believe, not naming them, but people can see it in public space, but they believe actually that live commerce will equate for more than 30% of the current .com revenues within the next 3 years alone.
And is this still a play for the big boys? I mean, you talked about JD's and Lego; they're both huge businesses, big organisations. Where can you get on board? Do you need to be 10, 20 million to afford the investment, or?
No, not at all. I mean, it's extremely affordable, because actually these technology companies especially have taken that cost away.
Right.
So they're enabling brands to go live on a stream with the buy now functionality for the customer, in a way that is completely affordable, and because the technology is driving that then pushes the live content back into the retailer's website, or back into the social platforms for that retailer or brand, and it's all done via technology. So that's taken out, again, that investment for the brands themselves. So to put your toe in the water, actually someone like OO especially is a great vehicle, an economic way of testing what your customer wants and what good looks like from a content perspective. And so you can be a one-man band as an entrepreneur launching a product that you founded 2 years ago that you want to get exposure on. Phenomenal platform to work with. Or you could be a JD or a Lego, or one of the bigger guys as well. And because even Marks and Spencer's did test something in March of this year in their own store, but again, in a very natural environment. It went reasonably well, but it was not broadcasted live through social and within their own website. It was done in a way that was content and pre-recorded. And so even Marks and Spencer's are putting their toe in the water, knowing that actually video commerce has a meaning and has a future. But I think what many of the retailers and businesses don't know is actually the value of live versus pre-record.
Yeah.
And I think, as I've said before, pre-record conversions, because video content, it speaks, as we said, 1 minute speaks 4,000 words. Because of that, yes, pre-recorded can double or triple your conversion rate.
Yeah.
Actually, what we're talking about with live commerce, as I say, it can be as high as 5 or 6x.
So if I'm watched you speak this morning and I'm now looking to take my business into live commerce, where would you recommend I start?
I think by all means, you look at the experts, and I think the experts in this space have been from content generation, commercial live content generation, Ideal World are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's a business, as I say, it's been around 23 years. So I think as a company, if you want to get into this space, in a partnership, Ideal World is phenomenal. If you want to do it yourself in a smart way and with little investment initially, it's working with someone like or Hello Lisa or Firework and these brands that are enabling the retailer to get into this space and taking the headache away. And I think, certainly again, with the investment they've already made in the UK, and by the way, the founder of is actually one of the co-founders of ByteDance, which obviously own TikTok.
Okay.
So it's a small world. So what you find is technology and know-how is very much in a small
pool of people.
Yeah. And so certainly as a sort of medium, an SME, I would say, to a corporation size retail business, I would certainly be looking to work with someone like and other technology companies, which, like I say, there's only 3 or 4 in the whole wide world. But I would be looking to try and get that relationship, and try and put your toe in the water now, because the learnings will take a year to 2 years to what good looks like for you and your customer journey. But I think the big thing for me will be is that low cost of getting into the environment, the learnings, because of the data around the customer and his or her engagement is invaluable. It just, you can't put a price to it because you learn live. And I think those learnings for any brands or any retailer now, because of the change in face, especially in Europe and certainly the economy in the UK, where people's disposable income is much lower, for all the reasons we unfortunately live in at the moment, in the UK alone, and certain parts of Europe especially. I think those challenges for the retailer, this actually can give them very much a game-changing approach, whereby where they can hold their market share and actually even grow their market share.
It's a fantastic time, isn't it, to make a change that gets you on the upward trajectory for the next cycle of economic growth. So
and I think
shouldn't delay.
No, I think it shouldn't delay. You have to evolve as a business. We all know that. I think the natural progression from bricks and mortar into e-com, into multi-channel, into omni-channel. I believe live commerce is involvement of that experience. And I believe, like I say, it's in the public domain. Certain very reputable technology companies believe it will be 30+% of the current .com, revenues in 3 years. I actually think in 5 years' time, live commerce will be a daily occurrence by all the top businesses and brands internationally, and I think it'll be an expectation of the customer on that customer journey and their customer experience. It will be, like I say, expected by that consumer to have that live engagement and enable them to actually ask questions or interact with the brand owner or the presenter or guest. And I think that will just be a natural habit, a natural evolvement, actually just the customer habit. And certainly that 25% that are already shopping online as of 2.5-3 years ago, pre-pandemic, those people are the people that are bored right now, and they're turned off. And that's why what we're finding is there is a little bit of resurgence in bricks and mortar again, because actually the customer wants to engage with someone and they want to have that social interaction, which live commerce does.
Steve, fascinating conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Really appreciate the energy and thought that you've given to this, and I'm glad we spent the time doing it. Thanks again. Brilliant.
Appreciate it. Thank you.